Amanda, and today I'm going to do my February wrap-up. So I'm going to show you the books that I read in no particular order, and I believe I read 12 this month. The first book I'm going to show you is Still Life in Shadows by Alice J. Weisler. I received this for a review from Moody Publishers, and it's a Christian fiction book. It's about a man named Gideon who has left the Amish community, and he lives now in North Carolina, and he kind of helps Amish people who want to leave the community get on their feet, get an apartment, get a job, things like that. And along the way there is romance and turmoil and Gideon learning things about patience and forgiveness. I didn't love this book. I found it kind of boring, and I felt like some of the things were a bit inconsistent. One of the characters in this book is I believe 14-year-old girl named Kiki, and apparently she is autistic, but I know a lot of kids who are autistic, and I didn't feel like the author did a good job at all in portraying someone who is autistic in this book. It just didn't seem to mesh with that diagnosis. So I didn't really like that. I also just felt that this story was very slow, and I didn't really like the character of Gideon. I didn't really like any of the characters. One thing I did like about this book is that I felt it was a bit more realistic when it comes to the Amish community. I think that people have this image of Amish people as they are almost perfect, they're very peaceful, they live in harmony all the time, and obviously that's not true because they're people just like we are, and I'm sure they have their moments, and this book kind of pointed out that some Amish people are not nice, and they aren't always kind. And so I thought that was good because I've read a lot of Christian fiction, a lot of Amish stories in the Christian fiction world. Years ago, I was kind of caught up in the Beverly Lewis Amish romance books. They would touch on that, but there was a big tendency to kind of sugarcoat and romanticize that Amish community, and I don't feel like that is accurate in a lot of ways. So I did like that part of it, but it just wasn't my favorite book. So I gave this a 3 out of 5 stars. I also read Snowblind by Christopher Golden. I got this from Book Outlet in my last haul, and I'm extremely devastated because I think I lost the dust jacket for my book. I think my husband might have accidentally thrown it away. I take it off when I'm reading, and I had it in a basket, and my husband took the newspapers that were sitting on that basket and threw them away, and I think he might have taken my dust jacket with it, and I'm really sad because this had a really pretty dust jacket, so sad. But anyway, I did love this story. It is about a snowstorm, which is why I wanted to read it, because we were having a lot of snow, and it was just, I was in the mood for a wintry book. This definitely fit the bill. It takes place in a town called Coventry, Massachusetts, and 12 years ago there was a really bad snowstorm in which many people, I think it was like 17 or 18 people, were killed, and there were some really strange things going on. So now it's 12 years later, and there's another storm brewing, and the people that died kind of reappear in some ways. And it is just really, really good, really interesting and fun. His writing kind of reminded me a little bit of Stephen King's writing. It had a similar taste, similar feel to Stephen King. Stephen King did write a little recommendation for this book on the cover. So I would recommend this book if you like ghost stories, creepy stories, or even just a really good snowstorm story. I enjoyed this a lot, and I gave it 4 out of 5 stars. I also read Still Alice by Lisa Genova, and this book is for a book club that I joined in real life, and this is the book we're going to discuss in March. I probably would not have picked this book up on my own had I not had to read it for the book club. Not because I didn't think it sounded interesting, but just because I knew it was going to be sad, and it definitely was. It is about a woman named Alice who is, I believe, 50 years old, and she realizes she has early onset Alzheimer's disease. And it shows how that presents itself in the beginning and how it gets worse, and it just was really interesting. I used to work in a nursing home for several years as an activities assistant in the Alzheimer's unit for people with late stages of Alzheimer's disease, and it was such a sad thing. Probably one of the saddest things that can happen to someone, and it was just amazing to read. It's very, very well written, very well done. Definitely worth reading. I feel like it is an important book, but it is very sad. I gave this book 5 out of 5 stars. Then I read Until You're Mine by Samantha Hayes. I received this from Blogging for Books in exchange for a review, and this probably was my favorite book of the month. I loved this book. It is about a woman who has had a really hard time getting pregnant. She is married to her husband who was married before, and his first wife died. He has twin boys, and now she's pregnant with a little girl. And they decide to hire a nanny to come watch the boys and then take care of the little girl when she's born, because she has a job as a social worker and she wants to be able to work as well. So it's a live-in nanny, but the nanny is kind of suspicious, and the story goes from there. This book had one of the biggest twists I've ever read in a book. I didn't see it coming. I could see how some people did. Some people said they saw it coming when I read the reviews, but I really didn't. I knew there was a big twist. I just didn't guess it, and it was so good, so interesting. I really, really enjoyed this book. So it's like a psychological thriller, several twists and turns, and I gave this 5 out of 5 stars. I won this book through the Goodreads giveaways. This is Dr. Death. It's by Lene Caberbull. I discussed this book on my weekly wrap-up, I believe, so I will link that below. So I'm not going to talk a lot about it, but it came out on February 17th, and I did enjoy this. Historical fiction. It takes place in, late 1800s in France. I gave it 4 out of 5 stars. Another book I talked about in my weekly wrap-up is Lockdown by Alexander Gordon Smith. I also read Solitary, which is book 2, and I gave this one 4 out of 5 stars, and I gave this one a 3 out of 5 stars. I didn't enjoy this one as much as I enjoyed this one. I felt like this was almost like a filler book. Like, I felt like there was way too much time spent on this one situation, and I kind of started to lose interest. But I am going to continue with the series. I'm hoping that it gets better. It definitely ended on a cliffhanger, and I do love the environment of the story. It's this underground prison, and just very interesting. So this one was 3 out of 5 stars. And I also read Anna and the French Kiss by Stephanie Perkins. I talked about this in my weekly wrap-up. I enjoyed this book. I totally get why people loved it. It was just what I needed, because I'd been reading a lot of dark, disturbing stories, and I needed something sugary, and this definitely fit the bill on that. I gave this 3 out of 5 stars, which is pretty good for a lovey kind of story. I thought it was pretty cute. I also read Hades by Candace Fox, which looks like that, and I talked about this in my weekly wrap-up, I believe. I gave this book 4 out of 5 stars. This is a great book if you're a fan of Dexter and you like crime stories. It was really interesting. I also read The Forgotten Girls by Sarah Blydell. Cover looks kind of like that. And this one was about, it's a police procedural kind of book. This woman is actually in charge of the missing persons, and a girl is found dead. She has fallen in the woods, and they start to think that things are a bit suspicious, and when they do some further investigation, they realize this girl has once lived in a mental institution when she was younger, and she had a twin sister, and they were both declared dead 30 years ago. So they're kind of wondering what that's all about and where the sister is, and so the story follows that. I love the idea of that plot. I thought it sounded really good, but it just didn't grab me at all. It was kind of very slow moving and kind of boring in a lot of ways. It was just kind of dry, but the ending was amazing, and when you finally found out what was going on, it was extremely disturbing and extremely creepy. So I did love the ending, but it wasn't enough for me to bump up my rating that much, so I gave that one a 3 out of 5 stars, and I read that from NetGalley, as well as the Hades book. Hades by Candace Fox was from NetGalley as well. And the last book I read is another NetGalley book, and it is called This Little Piggy by B. Davenport. Looks like that. Sorry about my poor video skills. But anyway, this one was through NetGalley, as I said, and it is about a little baby is killed at this apartment complex, and it kind of starts this investigation and what happened. And along the way, it takes place in the 80s, I believe 1983, in, I believe, England. And that's when there was a big miners' strike in that area. I had never heard of this before, but apparently it was a very long, drawn-out thing, and a lot of ill will towards like Margaret Thatcher, and just a lot of political drama going on in that time. And so there's a lot of connections to that. The baby's dad was a coal miner, and so it really was interesting to find out about that and to learn about that. I was able to guess the big plot, the big reveal at the end, but I still found it very unique in the way it was written. And so I gave that book 4 out of 5 stars. And those are all the books I read in February. I am kind of taking it slower this month in March. March is a long month though, so I might be able to read more, but I feel like I'm kind of in a little bit of a reading slump. So I'm not forcing myself to read. I'm just kind of slowly going through books and just trying to enjoy them. I'm going to try to do weekly updates. I said this and I did one so far, but I am going to try because I do enjoy that if I'm able to do it. So we'll see how that goes. But thanks for watching. I'll see you next time. Bye.